Mr. Mercedes, finders keepers, it is the end of this watch. Welcome back to another edition of Drotalks. Dro here. Today I'll be reviewing End of Watch, written by Stephen King and narrated by Will Patton. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and ring that bell to get notified all the way to an Amazon gift card. I have a giveaway going on once I reach 163 subscribers, where there will be counting not one, but 2 winners. So do yourself a favor, share, like, and subscribe to my videos. That way you can get some of that Amazon goodness in your pocket. As I mentioned, End of Watch is the conclusion by your master storyteller Stephen King to the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, where we follow Bill Hodges and his quest to be a retired private eye type detective. In the first 2 books in this trilogy, Bill Hodges takes down Brady Hartsfield, who's a spoiler warning, is a serial killer. He used a Mercedes to plow through a crowd of unemployed or people looking for employment at an unemployed line, and Bill Hodges was the one that brought him to justice with his ragtag band of people extraordinaire, Holly and Jerome. Holly, again spoiler, bashes Brady Hartsfield's brains with a sack full of marbles, and since book 1, Brady Hartsfield's in a coma, and Bill Hodges continues to visit him throughout book 2, where it's its own separate story. It's probably the one story out of the trilogy that can be listened to as a standalone. And Bill Hodges hovers around Brady Hartsfield with a mixture of worry and obsession. And this story, unlike the other 2, turns the whole trilogy on its head. So this is one of the very few stories, especially book 1 and 2, where Stephen King strays away from his supernatural side, and it's a straight up detective, you got a good guy, bad guy type story. It's done a little differently than other authors do these type of tales, but it's very good and almost no supernatural elements here. So those of you that love that aspect of book 1 and 2 are gonna more than likely be very disappointed with this book, and those of you that didn't like that aspect in book 1 and 2 are gonna be very happy to learn that this book is supernatural galore. Stephen King turns up that dial on that supernatural thermostat, and here we go. So Brady Hartsfield, being in a coma, somehow obtains, you call them superpowers, you call them psychic abilities, whatever you want to call them. He can now inhibit people's bodies, take over control of their mind by basically taking possession of them. And you add to this and his perverted sense of, enjoyment, killing people, and you add his new psychic abilities, you add a defective tablet and a more defective application, and you get yourself a recipe for disaster, as Brady Hartsfield, possessing several individuals, creates a way to convince people to commit suicide. And as suicide rates rise, the only person that suspects this comatose individual is Bill Hodges. Like I said, you need a little bit of obsession to make that leap. Bill, suicide rates are increasing. It's Brady Hartsfield. But he's in a coma. God damn it, don't you read any Stephen King books? You're right. Let's pull the plug. It's too late. And that, my friends, is End of Watch in a nutshell. This story, no joke, is definitely the strongest one in the trilogy. Definitely stronger than 1 and 2 in my opinion. Again, it has that supernatural error to it, which is where Stephen King thrives. That's his zone. You get Stephen King, you get supernatural, he's in his element. And this book definitely shows that. It highlights that. The terror is there, the desperation is there. How do you stop someone that really is immortal because he can pass to body to body? I mean, this definitely takes what is already a terrifying villain in Brady Hartsfield and brings him up to that extra level with this supernatural era to it. So, although I gave away a lot to this, I can tell you that there are some twists and turns in this story. Some that you wouldn't expect, some that you might see coming. Either way, whether you don't expect them or you see them coming, it leaves you very satisfied, and this is a very satisfying conclusion to what is, in all reality, a really great trilogy by Stephen King. And it's for this reason that I would give the story a 5 out of 5. So that leads us into narration. So in narration, we have Will Patton taking the helm again in the first 2 reviews, which will be below, so for your viewing enjoyment. Will Patton was actually one of my favorite parts of both of those stories. Those stories are a little bit weaker than this one. Finders Keepers was probably the second best, and Mr. Mercedes was probably the least favorite in my opinion. That all of them really good, just the second one was stronger, definitely building up that strength in my opinion. But Will Patton was the best part of those 2 books, and that don't change here. He is definitely the best part of this book. He brings these characters to life. Holly, I love her. She's weird and awesome, and one of my favorite characters, hands down. Jerome, can we just give him a standalone book now, please? Can we do something like Dr. Sleep, where we just show up when he's like 40 and he has a drinking problem from all this crazy supernatural stuff he saw, and then we tie it back down into Colorado on the Sunset Manor, Mountain Manor, or whatever the manor that castle was called. Let's give #Jerome his standalone book. That's what I'm talking about. And Bill Hodges, which is truly one of my favorite Stephen King characters. The trilogy is not my favorite trilogy, or my favorite series or books even from Stephen King. He has a lot of, especially his older book, Salem's Lot is one of my all-time favorites. But Bill Hodges is just a great character, and I really loved him, and this book does not disappoint, even though he is obsessed. And Will Patton brings all these to life, and for that reason, I would give narration a 5 out of 5. So that leaves us with listenability. Would I listen to this book again? Unlike the other 2, this book I actually listened to. Once I finished it, I went back and I didn't listen to it in its entirety, but I did basically listen to segments that I bookmarked along the way, because there were some items in this, some paths or decisions that Stephen King took in developing this story that I just thought were pretty cool, and I re-listened to a lot of the parts. And then once you start listening to a good part, you get caught on it. Before you know it, you listen to an hour of the book and you're like, oh, I just meant to listen to that one part. So for this reason, I give listenability a 5 out of 5. So have you listened to the Mr. Mercedes trilogy? If so, which book was your favorite? If you can't tell, my favorite was End of Watch. They're all good though. I highly recommend this series. Do yourself a favor, go out there and pick these books up. You will not regret it. As always, that has been Drotalks. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, share, and ring that bell to get notified. And of course, we will see you next time.